Today, I'm going to be talking about Celebrity Apex and how I found such a good deal with the ship. I actually just came home from the Celebrity Constellation, so be sure to check out that video. I enjoyed my time in Europe so much that I was shopping around on the Celebrity website to see if they're going to have any more deals. Also, because my Schengen visa was still valid. So I thought, what the heck, I might as well go back. And I was so happy because I found a really good deal on the Celebrity Apex, and that at the time it was one of its newest ships. Because I travel alone and I have to pay double occupancy, the price for the double occupancy was $1,100.
Wow.
I booked it in September. I ended up going in October, and I'm so happy I found this deal because it was for 12 nights. I loved every part of the Apex. I was happy that I got a balcony cabin with this deal. And not just any ordinary balcony cabin, an infinite veranda balcony. The balcony sliding door opens and closes, but it's connected to your room to make your room look bigger. When it closes, it's like a window in your room, and then when the top part opens, it's like a balcony. Small world. So the cruise director, Alejandro, of this cruise, I had met on my very first cruise with the Millennium, the Abraham Hicks group that I went on the Millennium to Alaska. So I got to see Alejandro again. This ship was very big. So it took me it took me about 3 days to explore it and get to know the ship. The pool was massive. Probably the biggest pool I've ever come across on a cruise. So big that you were able to do laps. And the inside pool was also really relaxing. The jogging and walking track was also elevated, which I love because it just makes your working and jogging experience better. The ship was also so big that it had a rooftop garden. So this was a really nice area where I spent most of my days. It had plants and you could be in nature, and it was just a nice chill area, always quiet. And I discovered that there was a bird that I saw every day that lived in the garden. I guess the bird was getting a free ride. And then while we were sailing in the Mediterranean, I got to see the Stromboli volcano. So that was really beautiful. There were 4 sea days, so this was perfect. Because it's so big, they provide extra entertainment. All I remember is that I was really busy on this cruise because the entertainment was back to back, and I spent all my time going from the one end of the ship, from the theater of the ship, to the other side of the ship where they have it's a restaurant by day, but then at night it turns into an entertainment area. I think they had 2 separate production teams, so there was always something happening. They even sometimes would have entertainment in the nightclub. Something spectacular that I got to witness with regards to the entertainment was the artist that they had on board. I forget his name, but whenever they had entertainment in Eden, whenever there was something happening like acrobatics, then he would be there on the side or in the background uh, painting. And then the food was outstanding. Everything was just wow. The dining options was very different on this ship compared to others. So usually they would have a buffet and then they'd have a main dining option. But on this ship, they had 4 different restaurants that were all complimentary, and they each had a different theme. So you could obviously decide where you wanted to eat that night, depending on the menu. One of my favorite restaurants of the 4 was the Normandy restaurant. It was a French theme. It seemed to be quieter than the other restaurants, and I love French cuisine. And the staff were outstanding, and everything was pink. Even the plates were pink. So, and I really love the decor of this restaurant, so I spent most of my evenings there. And then in the buffet, they would have different themed evenings depending on the port. I remember when we were in Turkey, they had Turkish delights on the buffets. And then I didn't do any specialty dining because I felt that it was so unnecessary because there were so many complimentary options. And then they also had this one restaurant. It was actually a bar by day and then a restaurant at night. The magic carpet, so it was a separate section attached to the ship, and it would go up and down the ship. Really cool, but it also kind of freaked me out because I'm scared of heights. So I'm really happy that I got to go to Israel, and I'm really happy that I went in October of 2022 because that's when it was okay. There wasn't any war or any crazy stuff happening. And when I was in Haifa, I went to this one museum and I just explored the area. And then when I was in Ashdod, I explored the area and went to the beach. And I remember it was crazy hot, like a hot weather that I've never experienced in my life. It was very dry and super hot. In Kusadasi, Turkey, I walked around. It was a very interesting port. They had lots of shops and things, but I didn't really like this area much because I found the Turkish people to be very forceful. And so I decided to walk along the port. And I found out that there's a castle along the port that's complimentary. And this castle is really beautiful. It has a garden and lovely views of the port and of the ship and of the ocean. So I spent some time around this castle area. When I was in Katakolon, Greece, I also walked around. I ended up having my nails done because it's way cheaper than doing it on the ship. This was a really lovely port. It had lots of restaurants and also views of the ocean and so many yachts. And then the town was also really cute. The beaches were lovely. There were many people swimming. So it was a really nice area to walk around in. I felt safe. I also popped in at the pharmacy here because I needed to buy some medication. I didn't do any excursions on this cruise because I was on a budget. I also felt like I really didn't need to. I spent my time at the ports wisely. And most of the ports time was for a full day, so I didn't have to rush. I could take my time and walk around and sightsee. Cyprus, we were there for a whole day, and I realized that you can't really walk anywhere from the port of Cyprus. So I planned to go diving because I found out that the diving is actually really good there. But be sure to watch my Cyprus video where I talk about all of that. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that this deal that I got with this cruise, the Wi-Fi was actually included, which I was so surprised because usually you have to pay extra for Wi-Fi. So that's how I was able to find the diving information about Cyprus while I was on the ship. I ended up catching a flu on this cruise because it was going around, and I guess when you're on a ship, it's kind of inevitable that you catch it because. But luckily, I always travel with medication, so I took this, and then I also ended up buying more medication at the pharmacy in Katakolon. So for one full day, I was completely out. I ended up sleeping that whole day because of the medication that I took. And this happened to be the day where the ship was at port in Athens, Greece. So I ended up not seeing the port of Athens. Also just rested and stayed in my cabin. The nice thing about Celebrity is that their room service is complimentary. So this wasn't really a problem for me to stay in my cabin. But luckily it wasn't that bad, and I was so high on the medication so I could still enjoy my time. Another thing that was included in this cruise was they gave you $100 spending money. I ended up using it to tip my steward. I also spent half of it to just play in the casino a bit, just to try my luck. It really was a good deal, and then also like other cruises, the cabin and the entertainment and the food is included. So I'm really glad that I got this other deal with Celebrity, and I'm also glad that I got to experience Europe again. I really loved Europe, and I would like to, now that I've gotten a taster of all the different places, I wouldn't mind to go back again, maybe to stay for a day or two or maybe even just to do another Europe cruise with a different itinerary. I really recommend Celebrity, and I also recommend going to Europe on a cruise. Be sure to check out all my other Europe videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.